We're going to start a little bit of poll. How many people consider themselves heavy LinkedIn? Okay, not as many as I thought. Kind of still trying to figure out LinkedIn. Who's out there? Have it? Not quite sure what it is. You get these invites and they just sit out there. How important do you think LinkedIn, is to your current position in terms of what you're doing, your day to day? Where are the fives? Where are the heavy users thinking this is important? Mike, Tom, anybody on the other end? Like it really doesn't impact Eddie. It hasn't impacted you yet. Okay, we're going to fix that today, and Ty as well. The reason this content formation started, Allie and I work with business-to-business manufacturers exclusively, and we started discovering that there's this group of people, maybe they've been heads down doing their work for 30 plus years, middle management, and they missed LinkedIn. They just completely missed it. They get these invitations, it's out there, they have maybe a profile, which is pretty much their email, and no picture, a little bit of content, somebody set it up for them, maybe it just says United States, and that's it. And they're starting to get invites, and they don't know what to do with it, but they're starting to hear, like, are you on LinkedIn? Let me connect with you, etc. And we just said, let us just do this for our clients. And then as we joined MRN back in January, February, and we're going to talk about the one-to-ones that they do, we realized just how much more power there is in LinkedIn and keeping this up to date. What are some of your frustrations currently with the platform, Ty?
I've got over 3,000 connections. I have not really gotten one sales lead out of 3,000 connections.
And your profile, you've been active since when?
Probably about 4 years, 5 years.
Okay. Anybody 10 years LinkedIn? Anybody who's been out there that long? Eddie?
Yeah.
That long? Mike? Tom? Do you remember the actual LinkedIn parties? Where it was like live parties where people would get together and they'd be promoted, and everybody and their mother wanted to connect with you on LinkedIn, and that was the day where you just connected with everybody, which we're going to talk about. And I remember a particular reporter asking me at one of these parties is, where do you see LinkedIn in its use? And at the time, it was just starting to be that R word, that recession. And I said, well, it's a bell curve. It's inversely related. The more the economy dives, the more you're going to see LinkedIn pick up because everybody was looking for a job. My second part of that prediction was that LinkedIn would level off, and that didn't happen. LinkedIn continued to grow, and what we saw is really a powerful platform and selling for a lot more than we probably are going to sell our companies for. Maybe Factor would sell for the billions. Any other frustrations with LinkedIn? Again, we're not representing LinkedIn, so don't ask us to fix the software, but frustrations with use, Mike?
Maybe I'm just cheap, but it seems like to get your biggest bang for the buck, you got to buy the membership, which is, I think, the price is not cheap.
Right. Software as a service is certainly the platform, and we're going to talk about that. Before we're going to get to that later in the presentation, but any premium users, anybody that's paying for it? Incidentally, those were the ones that raised their hands as heavy users, So we may be calling on you guys because we are not paying for it yet, but if there was a software platform that I'm probably looking at down the road, I'm hearing more and more. That might be one of the ones to pay for. So not getting any leads, premium price, any other frustrations?
I can't get a grasp on how much time is really, how much the time benefit ratio.
Sure.
Now I'm supposed to be on the road the whole time, so I mean I can allocate time to do that, but I go in spurts where I'll use it a lot, and then I'm like, I'll just go back to
Excellent. So the question is, how much time should be utilized? That's going to be a personal decision. We are going to address that as well. But there are a lot of tools now with these things that we carry and our teenagers carry called smartphones. There's a lot of apps and a lot of ways you can maximize your time. And we're also going to talk about that when it comes to content marketing, how to maximize time with a little bit more of a bundling of those efforts. Other frustrations? Okay, everybody get a cookie?
Profile, make connections, and then never, people that I know won't even respond.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
And everybody's different, and the one interesting thing about LinkedIn is not everybody, a lot of people are using their personal email, whether it's a Gmail or such, because with people transitioning jobs all the time, they don't want to lose their profile and lock in access or lose access. So you may see that could be going to an email that, you know, they're not getting notified. And there's all different ways to get notification, but hopefully if we can uncover some tips and tools to increase throughput to the people that aren't responding. And that doesn't mean all the traditional ways of marketing and networking and what you're doing today and reaching out and meeting people, you know, still have value. Any other frustrations? We'll move along. Mike?
Well, the old adage, when you receive a request for someone you've never met, and or if you want to request to friend someone or whatever that you've never met.
We're going to talk about that as well. So we're going to put these out, and I appreciate your reminding me, and we'll try to check off all these things. I think we've got some content and discussions. Again, want to make this as interactive as possible. Don't necessarily have you rebuilding your profile as we speak, but if you hear something and we start a path of discussion, you can either make yourself a note or go live and fix it today, and we may even utilize the internet if we need to as well. Yes.
If we have time, I'd love to hear about how to best utilize individual profiles for the company's profile and how we best set that up.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, you know, the company LinkedIn versus the individual profile?
Right,
Okay.
and how we make those work together.
Okay, yeah, we should have plenty of time. We might not have slides specifically on that, but I think we've worked with a lot of clients in the individual profiles, and it is referenced in here, but we may be able to go a little deeper in that. Any others for the list? All right. Top tips for a stellar profile, and I'm going to turn it over to Allie.
All right. Okay, so just going over some basics. Please use a current photo. I had a meeting with someone like 4 months ago, and I didn't even recognize the man. It was a person that connected with me. I was at Panera for probably 10 minutes texting him, "Hey, where you are?" until he saw my message, and sure enough, he was a few places over for me, but I had no idea who he was. Also, trying to keep it professional. I mean, headshot, medium shot. Don't have a group shot. I've seen people use their wedding photos. Don't do that. Just use your best judgment. Background image, if you look actually on Rob's profile, he has a really nice background image that says "We Get Manufacturing," which is our tagline. So that's another place to really brand yourself and make your profile kind of distinguished. Contact info. Make sure you've got your phone number on there, link to your website, or if you have a blog, that might be good if you guys have content on your blog to link to that as well. Also, link to your Twitter, your business Twitter. That's always good and a good way to get more followers. Now, a big thing that really has helped me get more traffic to my personal LinkedIn is right up here. It's this little description line underneath my name. If you don't change it, it's just going to say your title. Now, I would suggest a lot of you look at that because some of your titles are super long or might not be very specific to what you do. It might be kind of confusing. So mine says PR and Marketing Specialist for Manufacturers, and since I've changed that and made it very specific, I've seen a big increase with visitors on my website. I know Caleb also, he has a really good one. I think his is...
Hoping you find new MFG customers.
Yeah, so it's very targeted. Or, I mean, you can always just kind of put... I use an example, maybe business development at your company. That might be good. Any questions so far?
I might also mention a lot of times when you put in your website, there is the ability to customize the name. So instead of just saying company website, which everybody in the 27 million world is optimizing for with LinkedIn, there's a drop down that says other where you can actually name the site. So instead, when hers comes up as Felber PR Marketing, if you don't do that, it's just going to say company website. And in the search engine optimization world, you're only optimizing, for what everybody else in the world is optimizing. So customize that as well and use as many drop downs as Allie mentioned. Your blog, maybe there's a link directly to your newsletter, and of course your main website.
Right.
I will add on top of that. I see an incredible amount of people that have company website that's their old company, and half the time it's a competitor of the company that they're with now.
Oh my goodness.
So, like, this is one of my like purposes in life is to like eliminate this. So I've blogged about this. So make sure that your company website does not reroute to your old company.
Right, absolutely. Okay. Another thing that's really key is make sure your position links to your company's page. So if you go on your page and it says current, it should be a hot link to go to your company page. Now, if your company does not have a page, that's a whole other story. We can go into that more further. Make sure under each of your positions that you're listing your experience. And don't do a big paragraph, really bullet it out, because personally my millennial brain can't stand to look at a paragraph. Let's just be honest. And really make it as specific as possible. Use statistics. I mean, how much did you grow your department? Or what verticals do you serve? Really customize it and distinguish yourself. What makes you unique and special?
I would also say, again, when we talk about search engine optimization, if you're like us, we're in marketing and we volunteer for an organization, well, guess what committee they put us on? Could we do something else? But no, we're always in marketing. But to that point, every position, volunteer position, paid position that you've done, a lot of you are active in even faith-based groups. You put all those down. If you were the marketing manager, for your son's Little League team, you put that down, and it actually really helps your profile, because then the same words that you're hoping to be found by are so much more prevalent in your profile. Mm-hmm. Marketing and public relations is all over both of our profiles for that reason, because those are the positions that we also volunteer for.
Right, definitely. Okay, so like Rob was talking about, include all current and past boards that you've been on, volunteering committees and causes, past and present. So really look through your profiles. I know a lot of you have been in the business for a bit of time, so make sure you're including everything you do. And also list skills, and I'll go into specifics about why this is really important further on in the presentation, but make sure you use targeted keywords and look at your competitors. What are they using? What are people in your position using? And kind of use that as a benchmark, and then really customize your profile based upon that. Because you want when people are looking at yours versus your competitors for them to be pretty even keeled. Okay, another thing that is important is a detailed summary in the background section, and I'll show you an example of Rob's, which is excellent. But make sure you really list your keywords of both experience and products you market. And here, I'll show you an example of this. So here's Rob's. So in it, you can see a lot of keywords. He talks about inbound and traditional marketing, public relations, special events. He lists some of the clients that we've worked with, which really helps show that our brand is established. And he also talks about our capabilities, what we do. And these are all keywords of things people are looking for when they want someone in our field. Especially, we use a lot of things like trade shows. We include that because, of course, our clients are manufacturers. We really try to customize it. So definitely think about those types of things. I mean, if you can list clients, I know some of you, you may be a little bit more wary to, but I mean, that's definitely a distinguisher that can really help.
And that's going to come back in play when we get into endorsements, because this is where endorsements live, and just kind of put a pin in that. And when we get to that, we'll talk about why this summary list is important.
Right, absolutely.
And then, with respect to all those volunteer groups, and you may have, some of us may even have multiple companies, the first thing that's going to frustrate you is you don't have an end date to your current company, but you're going to put another company in that you started, and maybe that's not the primary one that you want, but there is a way to go in and edit and slide up and down your various companies so that maybe the primary one, in my case, Felber Public Relations and Marketing, I want to be primary. I don't want it to be my school board position, as my main LinkedIn position, or even my other company, Next for Nonprofit. Felber PR is our main. That's what I want people to see the most part. So you can adjust that. So if you do go in and follow our advice and add other, positions that you're, the treasurer for such and such, and there's no end date, you don't want that to be your main profile.
Right, absolutely. All right, any questions on this section, or any comments about what you've done. Have you changed your background recently and gotten any good feedback, or what have you seen that you don't like about some people's backgrounds?
So think about your skill sets too, and jot those down or make a quick list.
Right.
You know, as we're talking, if there's all the things that you do, if you're, you know, you've been a certain type of technician in machining and you've got certain certifications, think of those keywords, and that'll again come into play under endorsements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I saw a hand over here.
I was going to ask Caleb and Rob, is there a way that this presentation is going to be shared with your
Yeah.
comments?
Yes,
Yeah, we'll send it.
absolutely. Yeah,
We'll send it
we'll
off.
probably throw up a slide share,
Mhm.
and we didn't want to give it ahead of time because you know what happens when
Right,
people are flipping pages. So we only give you one page to look at in the meantime.
right.
But yeah, we'll make it available, slide share, and maybe with Dan's help, even some multimedia if you really want to listen to us again.
Uh-huh.
You know, maybe when you're in the car, and you know, I know, you know, Chimichanga's been asking us for a podcast, so.
Right.
Big challenge.
You know.
All right, let's keep rolling. So, all right, let's get into recommendations and endorsements, which I know this is something that a lot of people have questions on. Okay, so what is an endorsement?
You doing this one?
Yeah.
Okay, you keep going.
Yeah, so an endorsement is based on the skills that you set for yourself, which I talked about earlier. So that's why it's really important to select targeted skills for yourself, and really look at your competitors and see what they're saying. And really the best way to get endorsements is to give them. So, I mean, when you go on someone's profile, a lot of times you'll see at the top, it'll say, does such and such know about inbound sales or trade shows or X, Y, and Z, and you can click and say yes, that they do. And that's really a good way. If people see you endorsing them, they'll be more likely to endorse you as well.
Add a couple things to that. Again, I should have told you we were going to tag team on certain content. Initially, I was like, what are these silly endorsements that are coming up all the time? And I actually thought this was brilliant on LinkedIn's part. Like with any website or any company, you want to be sticky. And LinkedIn is continually adding different ways to keep you engaged with the software. Now that doesn't mean that, you know, someone that you just connected, and I just had this happen, someone that wanted to connect with me and I agreed, and then they immediately endorsed me and I thought, wow, they don't even know me. And so there is a little bit of downside to this, but people do tend to look at the activity, and every time you're making endorsements or engaging with someone, it's simply a touch point. So that's why we kind of lean towards the positive side of endorsements, and as Ellie will talk about recommendations as well. It keeps your profile active, keeps you in the forefront, and that's really where LinkedIn shines, especially when it comes to connecting with people you don't know down the road. It's the endorsements help with that, and it just shows you as you're someone who's active. As it was mentioned earlier, people say, hey, I reached out to someone, they connected, and they've never even responded. Those are not LinkedIn power users. Those are people that are not using LinkedIn, and you can very quickly in a 5-minute to 24-hour period realize is someone actually going to be a decent connection if they've even responded. And to answer Chuck's question, it's the people that are on the road that are using the apps that are responding quickly too, because they're constantly, it pops up on my phone and on my computer constantly, and that's how we're able to respond so quickly.
Right, and definitely, I mean, it just adds to your credibility. I know I was looking at some of your profiles. I saw Eddie's, and I was looking at yours. One of your top skills has I think almost 100 endorsements. So really, that's something that makes you look like a superstar. So and really adds to your credibility. So
Because he's not in real life.
no, he is. He's great. So definitely. Okay, recommendations. Now these are really tricky to get because not only will people see it on your LinkedIn, but they're also going to see it on the person's LinkedIn who wrote a recommendation for you. So I know, Eddie, I think you wrote some back in 2010 because I was creeping on your profile.
Okay.
And I can see them on your profile, your recommendations for other people.
Okay.
So if you get a recommendation, that's huge for you. It really shows that they know you well, that they're going to put their reputation on the line for you. So it's definitely much more meaningful than an endorsement, which is just a quick click. And here's an example of a lovely one that Caleb got, which makes him look amazing, rightfully so. And just keep in mind, if you're doing one of these recommendations, it's online forever. And Rob had mentioned something to me the other day, but it actually can, if you're recommending someone who is maybe a coworker, it could possibly have issues if you're a boss.
Yeah, one of my good friends is a labor relations attorney and has a presentation on how social media is tearing at the fabric of employment law. And maybe our folks from Alliance, or are they still here? There you are. May have an opinion, but there's been plenty times where, you know, all of a sudden someone's performance is slipping, and you know how you get a document, and all of a sudden it's time for that company to part ways, and an astute attorney is going to say, well, wait a second. 3 months ago, you said this, and this about them. So we're starting to see social media, especially LinkedIn, creep into employment law. That's not to scare you away from doing this, but it's just something to be aware of if you supervise and you write certain recommendations.
Right.
Just be aware of. Has anyone had any experience along those lines? You guys are taking your recommendations down on each other.
I said, could I have a recommendation?
But again, you know, as Allie's going to, mention, you can write, if it's a good client, or, you can write something and say, hey, would you post this? And there's an edit ability that if someone does write one, it comes to you, it just doesn't post live. You can edit it, you can say, hey, can you change it a little bit, or that's perfect. And some of the reasons for endorsements and recommendations, the only reason to give them is to what? To get. Ziegler was present on video here, an hour ago, and that was one of his things is you have to give to get.
Right, absolutely. So basically, as Rob was just saying, I mean, it's behavior oriented. You've got to give to get. You have to put the time in really to see results. So definitely you can write a recommendation and then ask a colleague to post it. Of course, there has to be really high trust to do that. And I'll show an example of that on the next slide. Or really, you can approach contacts. If they've endorsed you for multiple skills online, just approach them that way and say, hey, would you be interested in doing this?
And part of this, I was just going to say, part of the stickiness of LinkedIn that they've now added, if someone endorses you, you can thank them. So you're starting again this conversation.
Right.
And we do a lot of those automated thank yous, again, to keep things sticky and active.
Right. So here's a mock example of a recommendation we wrote. So it talks about the mock person Laura Woods, and it talks about how she's detail oriented. It talks about a specific project that she led that you worked with her on. It talks about some qualities about her, that she's honest and does what she says. So it's really a place where you can really talk about very specific capabilities about what you do and what makes you special. So, think about clients you've worked for and you've really helped them save money or save time, or what have you done that's really helped their business, and then approach them and say, hey, would you be interested? All right, and then I'm going to toss it over to Rob.
Thank you, Ellie. Any questions so far? All right, again, interrupt us as need be. So now we've done the basics. We've tooled up our profile. We have a good picture. There's not half of an arm from the person you were standing next to, or a plant growing out of your head. For as little as 125, 150, you can get a decent headshot that you can use in many, many places around your professional career. If you write content marketing and they're asking for a headshot to go with the profile, you'll get a lot of return on investment by taking a decent headshot. Blind connections, some of the concerns that people have mentioned earlier and was mentioned here, what's the best way to connect? And I joked about those parties where everybody in the world was connecting, and those were the early days of LinkedIn, and I'm probably going back 2006, 2008, and there are thousands of connections I have of people that I probably really don't know that well. But when we start getting into connecting and interacting, and this happened with Mike in one of the early what we call one-on-ones, and for those that aren't part of Factor, it's really a sit-down appointment where you look at each other's contacts. And Mike had identified 6 contacts, 5 of which those contacts said, sure, have Mike call. I want to talk about logistics, is what Mike does at Jarrett Logistics. A couple of those contacts were people I hadn't talked to in years, but they were still connected, appreciated the reach out. They might have been a blind contact at one point. It's best, though, in my opinion, if you have a personal connection. If you can reach out and say, hey, I know we're part of the same group, or we know so-and-so, or we know a lot of the same people, to me, that goes a long way as opposed to the danger of those apps, which I was promoting earlier, that make it so easy. Names come up and you just click plus, 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 and connect. And what do they get? That I'd like to be part of your professional network. No personalization at all. So when you're using the desktop, you have the ability to customize a little bit. I have yet to find a workaround on the apps to be able to customize outside of a premium in message when you're just using those, do you know this person, connect. So I'd caution you, unless you really know that person, that they're going to recognize your name and your picture, that they'll connect. So any kind of personalization message, I used to get quite a bit of, and I think we may be covering this a little bit later, but I'll go into a little touch now onto what I call unsolicited invites. And I've kind of changed my philosophy recently after reading an article, but for many, many years, say I get 10 a week. Of those 10, I'd immediately put out a challenge message. Mary, thank you for the invite. Please refresh my memory on how we know each other. And then a couple different things happen. If they reply immediately, hey, I heard you speak, or we know some of the same people, I apologize for the vague invite, I'll probably connect. Most of the time what happens, 8 out of 10 just go away. And I figure if they're not on LinkedIn, and I used to go about 7 to 10 days, maybe at the minimum a week, if they hadn't even responded to my challenge, delete. Because what kind of power user are they? Are they even using LinkedIn? Do I really want them in my network? Once in a while someone will say, oh, well, if you just don't want to connect, well then, goodbye. They'd be nasty. I'm like, well, that's a connection I probably didn't want anyways. Sometimes you can actually take it to the point of, hey, maybe we could have a quick phone call and see how we can benefit each other's mutual network. Again, learn a little bit more about the person. It doesn't show that you're being kind of a jerk with your network, but that you want quality profiles in there. Does anybody get a lot of blind? Or have a question, Caleb?
No, I was going to make a comment. Well, I'll let you get back to the question, but I'm seeing more and more fake accounts too, and they typically look like Tom Brady or Giselle that are saying they're a local person and something, and I don't really know why people are doing this, but so it's good to.
It's good to know. Yeah, those. Again, just like I tell my teenagers, if you don't want it to be on the front page or mom to know, don't put it on the internet. It's one of the basic rules of crisis communications in our world.
Rob, do you understand how, because I don't, the logic that LinkedIn puts behind the, hey, do you know?
I don't know the algorithms per se. I know they're constantly updating, and I think what it does is it does look at who you connect. I'm sure there's common threads, and I'm sure there's a lot of math behind it, if anybody knows. I do know that certain behavior triggers certain circles. Like I'll connect with someone, and all of a sudden there's all these people that I coach softball with that are popping up. I do know you can accidentally, and I don't recommend necessarily dumping every contact you have. And LinkedIn will try to trick you once in a while, say, oh, add more contacts, connect your Gmail, and then everybody in the world, including like my kids or soccer players that I coach, that I accidentally have an email with when we send out game notices, all of a sudden they're getting an invite from me, and I'm not connecting with any student under 18 on Facebook or LinkedIn. It's just one of my rules. But I think there are some very changing and interesting algorithms on how you connect, and it's pretty amazing to me. Sometimes it's like, how did they even know I know that person? And sometimes I recognize pictures, sometimes I recognize profiles, but we'll dive deeper in, as we get into actually the meat of who do you really want to connect with, and get back to, Ty. So if we can get Ty a lead by the end of, noon, at least you're going to get Chipotle. So again, some people get funny. We used to have a debate in the early days of social media. I had another account executive working with me that her Facebook was private. That was her friends and family, and she did not want to have a mix. We have sales managers and business owners in the room. We're hybrids. We want everybody in the world to know us, and we don't care whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitter, Google+, what have you. To that end, we would connect with everybody. LinkedIn is your professional resume. This is where business is done, and it's all about business. If you didn't like that coworker, then don't connect with them. But you never know when, if a former employer becomes a prospect for you, how many times do you leave and your former employer is your first customer? So you can make your decisions. Everybody's got a personal style on how they want to connect. But we would encourage, to really, really think through who do you want in your network, and then decide what's the filter in your world. I mentioned an article changed the way I did something. I read an article recently that said, are you missing opportunities because you're being too strict on connecting? I went, probably. So I started connecting a little bit more. I'd look at someone, and if we have 10 or sometimes 50 shared connections, that's the algorithm, to your question, that's the algorithm telling me you should connect to this person. And then as we get into LinkedIn, and there are some premium users that may be able to address how you can get a little bit deeper into the connections and your connections that change almost minute by minute. Meaning if you're connected with someone and you've already gone through each other's contacts, within a day, they've got more contacts and you've got more contacts, and that needs to be refreshed, and you need to continue to do. And in our Facture world, repeat those one-on-ones. Mike and I did one in the beginning. I'm sure there's 10 or 20 more names that have been added that might fit his profile for logistics that he would want to connect with me. So that's a little bit on how to reach out if you've connected with them, if you've worked with them. I keep hitting the laser.
Question, we have.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
So, what if you have just accepted most people?
Yeah.
And now that you think about it, maybe you shouldn't. Is there a way to befriend without them, or how does that work? Do you know?
That's a good question. I think I've only deleted a couple people. I don't think, does anyone know? I don't think they won't know.
Yeah,
It's not like Facebook where,
go through mine and
yeah.
I'm trying to recall who that person is, and if I can't remember, a lot of times we don't pay.
Right. I try to keep, because I never know when I need that contact. And in the early days, it was, it's all about your CRM, which we're going to touch on a little bit, keeping that CRM up to date. But as LinkedIn was exploding, I quickly discovered that LinkedIn was taking over our CRM. I had tons and tons of contacts in my LinkedIn that I never put into our CRM or never got there. And thanks to a very short vignette video by Caleb and Facture, it takes about 10 seconds to download your contacts into your CRM, and we did that for recent newsletter sends, and it was one of those like, duh, we're supposed to know better. And it was like, I didn't even know you could do this. It was like, it's so obvious, and it takes literally seconds. And we have in one database 6,000 names, and we added probably another 1,500 that were in our LinkedIn that just never made it to our newsletter. And if they want to opt out, of course they can. But that's just another way to maximize those contacts. And for those of you that aren't in charge of your communications or your content marketing, your newsletter, go back and ask if you've got, how many people have more than one sales? I know a couple of you are sitting next to each other, which I'll never allow you to do in my networking presentation. Right, Tom? Can you sell to Chuck? Yep. You can? No. So I'm just going to go into a networking thing for a second because Caleb likes this one. You're giving up 50% of your networking ability by sitting next to someone you know. I won't pick on you ladies, or Air Technologies. But think about that the next time you go. If you notice, has Allie and I ever sat next to each other? I should sit back here because she does a better job presenting first than I do. So, building rapport. Again, connections, everybody's different. You can really freak out a millennial by calling them on the phone. And we found this out the other way.
Seriously.
Someone actually was creeping on our website, and that's a part about the inbound is that we're able to see where they're at, what content they're consuming, and they database themselves. And they were looking for a marketing firm, so I picked up the phone. I said, I know it's creepy. It's the day after Halloween, but I noticed you were on our website. Did you have some questions? And, the creepiness factor lasts only about 3 seconds, and they go, well, and then they start telling you everything. And it's the same with building rapport on LinkedIn. How many times do you get a message, oh, I'd like to connect with you, and you do, and then next thing you know is, can we get a cup of coffee? Here's what we do, and you get 19 paragraphs, which we're going to show you. That's not the way to start building rapport. As I mentioned earlier, maybe suggest a phone call. If you want to set yourself apart, say, hey, I'm interested in learning about what you do. Can we have a short phone call? If they're not even willing to do that, are they a connection you want? But if they're willing to have a short phone call, Chuck, maybe while you're on the road, those are good calls to knock out while you're driving. Just be safe. Don't text and drive. That's a good place for that type of activity. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the desktop lets you personalize your connections where the app often does it. And there's times where I'm like, oh, I definitely know this person. I'll just click yes, and they'll connect with me because I'm very surprised. The very first thing is when Dan and I met in less than 24 hours ago, I was like, send me a LinkedIn request. I do that now with college students. Who's got college students or knows a college student? Encourage them. I'm even encouraging seniors in high school, get a profile.
Yeah.
Keep it clean. You got to give them that whole speech, about what's out on the internet, like I mentioned earlier. But this is the beginning of the resume. I wish something like this existed when I went to college. Think about all those professors and all those business folks that came in and spoke to your classes that you would have connections with. And then a little touch on, we call it MRN because we're old school, but Facture was called the Manufacturers Referral Network, so they're kind of one and the same if we tend to blend that over. The crux of manufacturing referral networks and Facture is what we call these one-on-ones. So yes, you're getting together, you're doing bonding rapport, you're talking about everybody's individual circles and what they do outside of work, and that's great to getting to know somebody. And then what you do is you've also looked at and connected with them prior to that meeting, and this is where the work comes in. For those that are in Facture, don't just show up, do the work ahead of time. Come in connected and send ahead of time a document that says, here's my background information, but here's the 6 names, I usually go 6 to 8 at the most, that I'd like to meet. And then you sit down and Mike says, oh, you know what, I play golf with this guy, I know him real well, or this contact, even though he's a first connection, I really don't know that well. That is why we're doing this presentation, because we had so many people come in very well prepared, and then there's a couple people where they didn't quite even get LinkedIn. One person who shall remain nameless, I had to pull over to my computer and spend the next hour and a half teaching what LinkedIn was, because this person, no fault to Caleb, was in the group and just didn't get the power of LinkedIn. And for those that are trying to grow their business, this is where it really comes, rubber meets the road. Anybody want to talk about one-on-ones that has had some really, really good, powerful? I know, Eddie, we've had ones that we've opened up the door. Back to the stickiness part of LinkedIn, Eddie's finding the names in my profile, and then I'm reaching out to those person with a very specific ask and Eddie's information. Would you accept a call? You don't just connect. You don't do an email with both of you. I always ask permission, because maybe their brother-in-law does RFID, and there's no way Eddie's going to bump them out. But if they're willing to connect, which has happened, I had people that I hadn't spoke to in years, but were a fit for Eddie. And one of them even said, wow, thanks for thinking of me. I didn't want to say, well, it was really Eddie that thought about you and found you. You don't need to even say that. They thought, and my capital went up a little bit because they felt that I, out of thin air, thought of them. And that happens. I saw something, I was on social media for one of our clients that was at a trade show, and there was an exhibitor that I said, Eddie needs to know about this company. I just popped the URL, had nothing to do with LinkedIn. But it was just, I was thinking of them because now I'm focused on RFID and what Informs does. So questions on that? So we talked a little bit about how to deal with the unsolicited invite. As I said, if they know a lot of people, I've kind of started to back down on this. If they know a lot of the same people, maybe we should connect. Maybe that's the world telling us. Sometimes I'll send a message, how can I help you? Or if it's a new connection that I've accepted, even if it was possibly a weaker connection, my first email back to them is, hey, thanks for the invite. How may I help you? 1 out of 50 might actually have something. They just really wanted to grow their network, but they appreciate you reaching out. I just had a professor at Ohio State that in research and bio-research, I don't know why she wants to connect with me, but we have a lot of the same connections. I'm like, well, this is just interesting. Let me just connect and see what happens. And that's the question that I put out there. We talked about on the phone first, sending a challenge message. I used to have it, in the interest of time, anybody use macros on their iPhones or their smartphones where I could type two letters, and it would put the whole, thank you for the invite, please refresh my memory on how we know each other. And it started to sound a little crass, but it really kept the quality of the people in my network, at least challenging them a little bit.
How are you replying to that? So you get the notification.
Right, I get to, so-and-so would like to connect. And
the email, are you saying via email?
Yeah, there's a way to, you go into LinkedIn, and before you accept a connection, there's a way to reply to them, and you don't have to have the premium. And I would reply. They changed it a little bit I used to be able to do it much faster on my phone, and I think they blocked that. But you can go on desktop and basically send them a a message, thank you for the invite, before you ever connect. And then I would wait and see what would happen. And if they connect immediately and say, oh, you know, I heard you speak, or I was looking to grow my network, we're new to Northeast Ohio, all those good things, then I would connect. Questions on that? And it really comes down to, you know, what is their motive? Are they just trying to throw a bunch of names out there? And some people do that. Maybe they got a better looking picture than me, and they just throw, you know, a lot of invites out there, and people are like, oh, I'll connect with that person, I'll connect with that person, and people do that. And it's LinkedIn's version of spam, and that's why we get so many unsolicited invites. You know, I got an associate producer on the West Coast wanted to connect with me, and I'm going, why would this guy in talent management and comedy want to connect with me? And then I look, I'm like, oh, he's connected to my brother. So he's probably looking at my brother's profile. I'm like, well, if he knows my brother, you know, I'm not going to connect. No, I just connected with him because I have no idea who he knows, you know, and sometimes it may not be right in line with, you know, a business to business manufacturer, but again, we're growing our contacts. There's a right way and a wrong way. We talked a little bit about the wrong way. Don't harass people. Don't, you know, you connect and then you start pounding on them. When are we getting together? When do we get together? You know, we're all busy. We all don't have necessary time to take miscellaneous coffee appointments as we did when we were, you know, newer in our career. We talked a little bit earlier about the stickiness of, you know, new jobs, anniversaries. I do all this stuff and I get a lot of message backs. Hey, thanks for thinking of me. If it just says congratulations on your job anniversary, be cautious. Sometimes people don't update their profile, and the job anniversary is a job that they were either fired from or left a year before. So you might be bringing up something a little rough if you congratulate them on the 1-year anniversary of them getting fired. But this to me is a cool way. Birthdays, anniversaries. A new feature popped up on my phone the other day. I was in the messaging part of LinkedIn, and it said reconnect. I'm like, well, what is this? And I haven't quite been able to duplicate it, or I think they're beta testing it. But I clicked on it and it said, you haven't talked to this following people, you know, in 6 months. They just published an article. You can click on the article and make a comment. Again, LinkedIn's way of getting stickiness, helping you connect, helping you make the conversation. And, you know, how often do we make a connection and 10 seconds later we're 10 emails deep in something else and we forget about the connection? That's the power of just letting people know, hey, happy birthday. Customize the message. If it says, you know, dear Christian, happy, you know, just want to wish you a happy birthday. If they don't go by Christian, if they go by Chris, edit the message. You know, sometimes people put their formal names, but they, you know, they may not go by Robert, they go by Bob, what have you. Liking and commenting on people's posts. People see that. How many people post? At least once a year, you know, and then someone comments. I have some people that they read everything we post, and we'll talk more about in content marketing. But we also see the likes and the eyeballs, and again, that comes back into really building up your profile and hopefully rising to what they call superstar status on LinkedIn, and you can see how you compare with other folks. Add LinkedIn to your email signature, or I think, Eddie, you have a V card on yours. You know, so however you're helping people connect, give them opportunities. Your email signature, in our opinion, shouldn't just be -Mary. You know, what if all of a sudden you need to send Mary a thank you gift and there's no email, there's no snail address, there's no way to connect? Do you want to look at their company profile? Do they have a LinkedIn? Do they have a Google Plus? Are they on Pinterest, you know, like Joe, you know, posting pictures of his wife's, you know, cookies and stuff, you know? Yeah.
Wow, Joe, you can
Joe, yeah. I have a microphone in Easy Target. Jay.
You're a target rich
How much time a week do you spend on this? Do you keep it open in a window on your desk all day?
Excellent question, and it kind of ties back to Chuck's question. We're connected in such a way where it is popping up oftentimes. I can't always be on LinkedIn 24/7, but between the tools and the auto pop-ups and things on my phone, we can respond fairly quickly. If I had to log all the time, I'd probably be scared how much time we do spend. But the automation makes it easy. You know, if you're sitting in the lobby waiting for your appointment and they're 5 minutes late, get on your phone, as we all do, but get, you know, instead of looking at Facebook, you know, or what your kids are doing, which is really the only reason to have some social media is to see what your kids are doing. Get on LinkedIn, respond to a couple anniversaries, And you'll find little pockets of time, 30 seconds. It takes me 30 seconds to probably just like and wish happy anniversaries or birthdays, to a dozen people. And then LinkedIn will say you're all caught up for the day. It's just that simple. So you don't have to be buried in it. For those who are a little bit more, I need to be behavior oriented. Before you open your email in the morning, maybe spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn if you have to put it in your schedule. Most of us are all over the place. We're on the road. We're in meetings and such. You got to find the little pockets of time. I'm not sure if that's helping answer your question either, Chuck, about how much time. That's a personal decision. But adding it to your email signature lets people know you're there. And we talked about, as Ellie said earlier, I was stalking or I was creeping. It's almost at the point now, and Chuck saw it yesterday because, Tom said, hey, I'm bringing so-and-so to the meeting. So what did I do? I went and looked at your profile. You looked at mine. It's accepted nowadays. It's not where you have to be blind or be private. And everybody accepts, if you're on LinkedIn, that's the whole point. What's the point of having a profile if you don't want people to look at you? And we're going to touch it, based on this even more. But when we're doing our one-to-ones, one of the key features, it took me a second and I had to have my IT guy, figure it out for me. You go in and you do these searches, open things in a new window, makes your life so much easier. So if you go in and we'll talk about searching, remind me to talk about the new window feature. So this is the wrong way. This is someone that I just connected. I thought it was interesting, or maybe they didn't. Yeah, maybe they didn't even connect with me. And all of a sudden, millennial brain here shut down. This may be the most well-written introduction letter ever. And maybe had they mailed it, put a stamp on it, and handwritten the envelope, I might have read it. But this is not how I want to be reached out to. We're working with a lot of companies in your area, blah, blah, blah. I mean, is this, this is not, to me, the way to make a first introduction. And again, I'm on LinkedIn as Robert. Do I go by Robert? Very rarely, unless my wife is yelling at me. And then the middle names come out too, right? We all have that. So this, to me, is one of the wrong ways to connect. The factor way, we've talked about one-on-ones, getting into each other's profiles. We use these searches, and we can immediately see on a one-to-one member if we're going to have some success. If we go in, and again, I'm only looking for 6 to 8 names, maybe at the most, for a one-to-one meeting. If I put in National Sales Manager, you go down to contacts, and again, you have to be connected. You go into advanced search, and you're just searching by titles. It will connect you with everybody in their contacts that has some form of this in their profile. This might be a past position. They may be the owner or president of a firm, but maybe they were sales manager at ABC Manufacturing. And where we were spending a lot of times, you go and you do that search, you look at Dan Collins, you realize he's a great guy, and then I go back and I'm like, damn, I lost my search again. And I know there's things in premium that are a little bit more advanced, but the easiest way to do that is you bring up that search, you right click on the person's name as opposed to clicking on it. You right click, it says open in a new window. You open it up, yep, that's a name I like, or maybe I don't like, or I don't want to do business in Dallas. You close that window and you don't lose your search. It's a very simple thing, but it saves me a ton of time. And I go in and we do searches, as Ellie said. Our targets are sales managers, owners, presidents, and marketing managers in that order. So obviously sales managers are who we're looking for.
Well, and you can also do location-based too, which is great. So we can do like national sales managers in the Cleveland-Akron area, or you name it. So that's extremely beneficial as well.
And, again, if you find a good fit, ask somebody to do an introduction. Chipotle run?
Yep.
And then short and sweet introduction, something, why you want to connect with them, what's the value of connection. Don't be insulted, if people don't connect. Also keep in mind that not everybody is checking their LinkedIn. Not everybody set up the automatic notifications or turned them all off. And so they may not ever see your request. But so many of our clients, the reason we set this up is, we've been heads down doing our work for 20, 30 years. We have LinkedIn, but I got all these invites. What do I do with them? I'm like, how many do you have? Well, there's probably like 100 that they've never responded to. And I always laugh when I see someone that has woken up to LinkedIn, because all of a sudden they're accepting an invite that I sent like 2 years ago. And that happens. Everybody's at a different stage. There is no one standard. Who's this guy?
Yeah, that's how you.
So again, factor weight. We go in, we do a search. Look at all these sales managers that Eddie here, who's right there, the guy with the red dot on his shirt, that he can introduce us to. As Allie mentioned, you can do more advanced search here. Maybe you only want first connections. Really, when you're doing the one-to-ones, anything beyond the first connection, they probably don't know who that second connection is. So it would be a fluke that you'd find someone that's a second connection of one of your colleagues here that they actually know. So keep that in mind. First connections is really where it's at.
Isn't the first connection when you click on that, isn't that your relationship to them?
It can be. Yeah.
So
Well, it depends on how you're doing the advanced search.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, as Ellie did here, location-based. And I know there's some layers of this that get expanded on the premium as well. Questions on that? Again, you can spend a lot of time. If you set up a networking meeting, whether you're in Facture or not, this is where the work comes in. If you're going to meet with someone for coffee, connect with them ahead of time. Have a discussion. Hey, I'd like to see who we can help each other and mutual network. Let's connect on LinkedIn. And you could talk to them a little bit about how to do this. And I always say, how many people know somebody that's in transition? And they always reach out to you and they want your help. I go, well, here's how you can help yourself. Look at my contacts. Are there any companies that you're either targeting or you're interviewing with? See if I know somebody. And then I'd be happy to make a recommendation if that person's close enough to me. I might say, let me reach out to my contact. They may not be, the person that's the hiring manager, but they may be able to say, hey, a good friend of mine, talk to, to this person, and I understand they're applying for a job. Is that going to help? It could. So that's, Mike.
Hey, Rob, sometimes, if I'm remembering correctly, like if you're gonna request to friend somebody,
Yeah.
like a box might pop up where I can, fill something in and say a little bit more and then send it, and then sometimes I think it just automatically does it. And I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Or am I wrong with that?
I'm trying to paraphrase it.
No, he can set the initial message when he's friending someone, like connecting with someone. So yeah, sometimes it's obvious.
Sometimes it just goes boom and it disappears.
Right.
With some pre-writ.
Right. That'll happen on the apps. They will suggest something to say. When you're on your desktop, you can edit it. And what LinkedIn wants, LinkedIn wants you to have good contacts too. So if you don't know the person, it's gotten to the point where they won't let you connect anymore. You need to have their email address or be a premium user. Back in the day, I actually got shut down by LinkedIn back in 2008 where everybody was connected with everybody. And I was falsely making a mistake, and I think I did it 3 times, and I got a nasty gram from LinkedIn, your profile has been locked. And I actually agreed with why they locked it, agreed to follow procedures. I posted a blog post about how the right way to connect with LinkedIn. I have to go back and see how old that is when I last wrote that. Eric?
Well, I know what he's talking about, because I just added 2 people from my computer.
Yeah.
One of them asks, how do you know, and then you gotta fill it in, the other one, it just sends a connection.
That's a good question. It's probably in the algorithm.
Or the way that person has their LinkedIn set up.
It could be if they're open, if they're not restricted. Yeah, that's actually, yeah. Yeah, I find most of the time if I completely don't know the person, they might not even have, they might be using their Gmail, but I use their work address, and that's enough to let the connection go through. And that doesn't mean they're going to accept it. Hey, Vicki. It doesn't mean they're going to accept the connection, but it will, will kind of loosen the wheels a little bit and get it connected. But there's, you've worked with someone. Again, the reason you have your whole profile filled out, as Allie did in the beginning when we talked about the basics, is they may be a former coworker. If you don't have your company or companies or places that you've worked in your profile, you will not be able to pull the drop-down list. Used to work at Felber Public Relations and Marketing. That won't exist. And I've had many, past connections, or maybe they were a member of like John Carroll's Entrepreneurs Association. I may use that because that's the first thing they're going to see on the invite. A friend of yours from John Carroll Entrepreneurs Association has invited you to connect. So again, the whole point is trying to personalize that request to connect. Sometimes, again, I'm having a conversation. Hey, I'm going to send you an invite. and tell people, hey, let's connect here. If I've had a conversation with them, I almost assume I want to connect. Questions on that? We talked a little bit about premium. I'm not sure if the pricing is up to date, but different things you can do on LinkedIn subscriptions. These are all the pay ones, but you can see the line when you start to get into the heavier business, and I guess on recruiting, if you're using the recruitment, quite a bit. These give you a whole bunch of different ways to find leads. I'm at the point where I have yet to use the premium, and I ask people all the time, what are you getting out of the premium that you're not getting out of the basic? I'm starting to hear more on the Sales Navigator that those that are doing some heavy power on LinkedIn are getting good results with that. Any of our premium users know which level they're at, Mike?
I use the Sales Navigator.
Use that one.
You're able to set it up so that if there's, you can follow people, it'll give you updates. So I often look for people that are moving to a different company.
Sure.
So that I can reach out to them after they've moved to a new company.
And I've noticed that so what Mike's talking about, I've noticed you can, hey, this is someone I really want to follow in their career. I really like to get into their company. You can follow them, and it's kind of, putting a pin in their name until you actually find a way to connect with them. And it keeps you up to date. It also will suggest, because you're a connection with with people, who's changed in their profile and who you might be able to connect. So there's a little bit of automation that comes with that. Again, you have to decide what makes sense. InMail is the ability to send them a message when you're not connected. And that, I think, is probably where they thought they were hanging their hat with LinkedIn, is everybody would want to send a message. And so we'll lock that down only to premium users. So I don't know, any of our other premium users use the InMail message a lot? You do? Okay, Jay?
Yeah.
And it cuts through a little bit differently?
Yes.
Okay.
You get through to somebody if you don't have their email address, you might just have their name.
Right. And I can't think of, does anybody remember the name of the site that Caleb mentioned last meeting where you can, what's it called?
Hunter. I've used it.
Yeah, Hunter is to find emails of people.
Yeah, it's not bad. It all really depends on the size of the company. The bigger companies that have emails out there in the web, it does a pretty good job of. It definitely helps if you just don't have it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to use that because in our other world with finding, you would think journalists and reporters and editors would have their emails, and they almost put up more walls than the Great Wall of China around a publisher's website, and I just want to pitch a story, and I can't find that email for the life of me, so I'll do that. I'll start Googling variations of the person's name just to see if there's an email mentioned somewhere in some document on the internet. Sometimes it's really hard to follow. On the sales, it seems a little bit easier.
It does a good job too, where let's say a sales guy has his email out there, and it's joe.smith@ati.com.
Right.
It will create that for you. If enough of other people, 3-4 other people have that.
Right.
And I believe it actually sends it like a test, like pings
Really?
the email sometimes, depending. I don't know how it works.
So different way to pull these different tools, hunter.com, using with LinkedIn. Some of you may be on inbound marketing and have the ability to also see when people have database themselves. So this is obviously a personal decision or a company decision on what tools, but I'm leaning more towards the premium now. We're starting to see the value of that. So that may be our advanced class. Ellie's going to talk about groups and following and how that works.
All right, so how many of you are group users, just out of show of hand? Okay, so. All right. Is it daunting to you? Is it scary? You don't know what to do?
I don't get anything. I'm joining groups and nobody posts anything, nobody does anything.
Right. Well, I mean, every group is different, and I mean, I'll talk a bit about it in the section, but it's really important to, when you join groups, really kind of determine the culture and see if it's a fit, if it's worth posting content to that group. So I'll get a little bit more into that right now. Okay, so the good thing about groups is, it's a really good way to connect to people on a different level and really build your network. So over here is a snapshot of some groups that Rob is a member of. So you can see like American Cancer Society, WireNet, which is a group we're involved with for manufacturers. It's a networking group. You can see his Kent State University alumni group. It's just a way to really broaden your network. You never know where you can meet someone. When you join a group, look at, before you join the group, some groups are more public, so you can see who are members of the group. So is anyone connected to you? If so, maybe ask them before connecting to the group and kind of determine if it's good to invest your time then.
Allie, I did just notice something, this just the other day. LinkedIn is always trying to increase your stickiness in your profile, and it said you can increase your connections by 2% by joining this group. That was something I'd never seen before, so I requested to join, but any group that would have me, I'm not sure I want to be part of. But the point is, they're always looking to increase those connections. So you may see that on your desktop. That may be a brand new feature that they're rolling out.
Right, and groups really, they're not a be-all, end-all, but it's just another way to broaden your network and really grow. And if you're already posting content to your regular profile, why not take an extra 2 minutes and post to some groups? When you're posting to a group, though, it's really important to really gauge what is the culture of this network, meaning how often are people posting, what type of content gets the most likes and follows, and really kind of tailor your content toward that. Some things that are good to keep in mind are maybe tips and tricks you've learned from the industry, tools that you think could be beneficial, special events, if you think like, hey, there's this manufacturing trade show that I think maybe you guys would be interested in. That might be a good something to post. And also industry news. That's always a good post to kind of talk and really join in a conversation. And if your company is doing great blog content, that's another way to really get some more eyes on your website and really show your expertise.
I would, equate a group two ways. One to like a chamber membership, and the other to maybe a setting that we're in right now. In the chamber membership, who's ever been to a chamber meeting and 2 days later you get a letter, from someone that just joined that sent a letter to everybody? That's obviously counterculture to bonding and rapport and getting to know people. They just, join just to get the list. The other thing is in a culture, in like a setting, look at a group like a seminar like we're in right now. What is the culture? What can you talk about? Take a look and be a voyeur first. See what the group is about. Is there a lot of sales messages, or is it all how-to, non-salesy content? So jump in, as Ellie said, jump into that culture first and understand how each group is different. Each social media channel, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google+, etc., has a culture, and then each group in itself. WireNet has a lot of great content,
right?
But there's not a real high buy our veils, buy our veils, buy our veils kind of content on there. It's a lot of how-to content and some thoughtful content.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so one of the main things is do not bombard the group. Like, don't be posting more than everyone else, because people are going to get annoyed with you and they're going to kind of, see that you've posted again, roll their eyes and not look at your content. So just really try to be respectful and go with the flow and really, like we've been saying, really look at the culture. How often are people posting? What kinds of content is getting the most likes and comments? Avoid outright selling. So, I try to say, for maybe every 4 posts, do like 3 non-company related posts and maybe 1 company related post, if you think it'll be beneficial to the group. Also, comment on other people's posts to start conversations. Do I see a hand over there, Jay? Or are you just thinking? Are you just thinking?
All of a sudden my computer wants to reboot.
Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst. But yeah, I would definitely say, if you think something's interesting that someone's posted, just don't take the time to comment, 2-3 sentences. That really makes all the difference and really can help you build relationships with people you otherwise would not be able to. Any questions? All right, and then I will hand it over to Rob, and we'll talk a bit about content marketing with LinkedIn.
Thank you, Allie. We're getting toward the end. You guys have been great with questions, so if you have other ideas or something that we haven't covered that's not on the wall behind me, but just as to check, we've talked a little bit about some of your concerns, no leads, premium use, how much time to spend. We've talked about unsolicited invites and blind connections, but if there's anything else you want to add to that list, or as we get further into the content, please interrupt us. So what is content? You probably heard a lot about content over the last couple of years. We used to hear about branding and positioning. The words have changed, but I liken content to, cave paintings have been around a long time. Those were messages. Those were someone trying to get their content out. Maybe the best way to kill the boar, but hey, it still was how to to content before there were guys like Dan here to put it on video and help us disseminate it around the world. But content alone, without context, falls apart. So before, everybody was bombarding people with content. As Ellie said, we all know that person that, in the group of a nonprofit, maybe they're the one posting 8 out of the 10 posts. And you start to turn off that content. What it doesn't have is context. We all have different people that we sell to. We spent some time in Factor in the first part of our meeting, at the 8 o'clock, talking about, who are our buyers? What are some of the trends and hot topics in our industry? How can we write content that has the right context? We talked about your profiles and endorsements and keywords. It all comes into play when you're talking search engine optimization, whether it's pay-per-click on the pay side or the organic side of your LinkedIn profile can very much impact what they used to call the free side. But as you're finding, there's a little bit of work involved in these different profiles. So how do we know, what's going on? Here's an article. Here's what LinkedIn gives you. And it might just tell you, hey, how many eyeballs did you have? How many people liked it? Allie talked about comments. To me, it's pretty cool when people comment on your posts. We had one on a blog post the other day, and someone just made a comment. My two worlds just collided because I was talking about cold calls and the creepiness that I told you the story about, kind of Halloween. And my picture was, what's the guy from?
Steve Carell.
Steve Carell from The Office, and it was a Halloween episode where he had a little dummy of himself over his shoulder. Real creepy photo, and people commented on it, and they engage with your content. So if you're writing good content, if you're starting to see statistics, then you're saying, okay, you're resonating. If this line is flat, maybe you got to look at your content and what you're posting and how you're using both LinkedIn. So a lot of people think that everything they put on is a published article, and it really is just a post. How many people post to LinkedIn status updates, content at all? A little bit? Someone? Eddie? Mike? Do you go to Pulse, though, or to actually published posts? There's a difference. And this is articles. How many people, obviously, from the group remember I broke my leg, and about a month and a half afterwards, I finally got around to writing the article about business owner interruption and what that meant, and it was really a cathartic kind of piece. That particular article got a lot of posts, and comments as well. A lot of people are like, oh, I didn't know you were hurt. Let's get together. Hope you're feeling better. It's all about engagement. But you can actually get into the demographics of your readers. How many people are, what are their top industries? What are their titles? What are you looking for? If I'm seeing sales specialist, salesperson, marketing specialist, I'm happy because, as you know, those are the people that we're targeting. If these, were different, obviously most of the people we know are going to be in Northeast Ohio. Not quite sure why this particular post had such a high Boston and Buffalo, but we do work national. And where's the source coming from? Most of the time, obviously, it's going to be LinkedIn. So different ways to evaluate, because at the end of the day, someone's going to ask you, how much time are you spending, and did you get anything out of it? So there's some soft time and some hard time. Keep track of what you're doing in that. You should all have, if you don't, does anybody not have? Vicky probably doesn't have. I'm out of the frame, I know, Dan. And I'm back.
Yeah, and I would just say also on Pulse, it's really a place for you to show your expertise and do original content. So, I mean, if you are an expert in valve fittings for a certain thing or something, it's really a place where you can expand on that and really distinguish yourself in your market. So, I mean, I think that's definitely an underused thing on LinkedIn, and it's definitely something that I personally have seen a lot of value in, that people now are recognizing my Pulse posts and seeing them even a month or so after I posted. It's kind of recirculating.
So we're going to talk about where to post as well, but the top, this is a sales funnel. Everybody has a different funnel. The paper in front of you says, who are the people that you're trying to attract? These are the people that, 70, 80% of the decision to buy from your company may be made before they ever call you. What does that mean? Just because they're over 40 doesn't mean they're not using the internet to search and find who you are. And the whole game here in sales is to take these strangers, get them to be visitors on your site. Does anybody here looking for leads? Probably not in this group, right? That's not why we're here. It's all about leads, turning them into customers, and hopefully we can get them to the point where they become raving fans. So the top of the funnel here, some of the things that we've touched on besides LinkedIn, search engine optimization, blogging, public relations, trade shows. This is all about attracting people, whether the content lives on LinkedIn or you start, as we suggest sometimes, as a blog post, and then that blog post gets posted maybe to LinkedIn, maybe to another group in our world like WireNet here locally, but it all comes back to our website because we want to track that person, we want to track those visitors, and we want to be able to capture that. And in the inbound world, that's what this is about. Automation will not work down here unless you fill the funnel up here. So good content that has context, whether again it's on your blog, maybe it's something about a trade show, optimizing your mobile and your sites, all this has to come together to increase those visitors. And again, if that's why we're on LinkedIn, to find more leads as Ty's looking for, this is what it comes down to. So many people, as Ali mentioned earlier when we were introducing ourselves in the first meeting, spend a lot of money on their website. And they go, yeah, we even get these Google Analytics reports and we have all these visitors, but so what? What they're missing is the ability to take these visitors and convert them right here into leads. And how is that done? That may be done by them databasing themselves, downloading an ebook or a white paper or a contact us or engaging with your content in some way. At some point you have to uncover who they are and find out, is this somebody I want to connect with on LinkedIn perhaps? Maybe you have them in your inbound software. Is anybody using anything like HubSpot or Marketo? Or their companies are using it? You gotta go ask your marketing directors what you're using, other than the fact that they're telling you must use Salesforce and you must like it, which don't necessarily go together. We're a HubSpot partner and we have the ability to see who's on our website. The millennial that I told you the story about that I creeped out by actually picking up the phone, and I said, well, who else are you talking to? Well, there's another marketing company, but they just emailed us back. That's, I freaked him out, but at the same time, in less than 24 hours, I was sitting in a room with all 5 decision makers. Again, less than 24 hours, got the budget, got an idea of who they were, disqualified them as a lead, but actually, was able to go to that process and not spin a bunch of wheels trading proposals. The way to convert, you do all this work on LinkedIn, you do all this work on content, you have to be a way to capture them on your website. Then you can start working the leads and send them other content. You can start sending them regular emails, if-then scenarios. If they open this email, now they get this piece of content. They don't open this email for 3 months, maybe they go into a different bucket. This is where both the power of LinkedIn meets the inbound. And this is where automation takes over. And you can see you getting into other things you can do with personalizing the email, the social media, sending them maybe custom articles from other people that you see. So any questions on this? Again, this is kind of the basics on sales funnel. Everybody might have a slightly different sales funnel. But in our world, here's what we're trying to do. There's people out there. Why are we on LinkedIn? Because we want more people to know about us. Why are we putting content? We want them coming back to our website. Again, that's the reason why you might post your content on your blog first. Then the LinkedIn post relates back to the blog. And you can actually see in the software, hey, where am I getting traffic? Which social media channels? LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, which ones are doing better? We may have a ton of followers on Twitter and less on LinkedIn, but we get more throughput on LinkedIn because it's a little bit more business. So any questions on that? Anybody doing anything a little differently? Different sales funnels that they're trying to get into? This was the article I was telling you about. What am I pointing out here? 2 things. Here's an article with what we thought was relevant content. Posted this on Halloween. And the title, got to have a catchy title. I'm not going to get into all the search engine optimization, but a couple stickiness things that we're trying to do here. Here's additional content that we reference by hot links. Again, this content exists on our website, so we're trying to drive people other places on our website. But if you're trying to capture leads, whether it's for LinkedIn or not, you have to find a way to capture them, whether it's contact us, subscribe to our newsletter, I need to learn more about how to use LinkedIn, whatever what they call to actions, and I'm going to go back up, call to actions that you have here, that's all that button is. And it takes you to here, the forms. Everybody's seen the forms on the website? You pretty much fill in, everything but your firstborn's birth date, right? Wrong. This form has to be commensurate to the information you want. What do we want what's the minimum that we would have to have for someone to subscribe to our newsletter? Email. The crux of our whole world and our system is that email. I don't need to know their company. I don't need to know their first or last name. That would be nice, but unless I give them something more valuable, that form needs to be very short. Now, if we've written an ebook that we've locked down, we have one called Trade Shows for Manufacturers, we will ask a little bit more information on that, just because we think it's worth it. So many people will look at this, a smaller percentage will click on that. Another smaller percentage will hit that form, even if it's just email and not actually database themselves. The people that take the next step, those are the people that are becoming leads that you might want to add to your LinkedIn profile to see other content. We all react to content differently. I used to joke, certain customers I would have to call, others would pay attention only if I faxed. And Joe, there was this thing you stuck a piece of paper in. It came, I'm just picking it up. Allie, there's this thing called a fax. Anybody remember Quip? Nobody knows. Before there was fax machines, you had to have one machine on either end. It was called a Quip. My father had one. And this thing would go around a drum for about a half hour, and the other person would get one page. That was the precursor, to fax machines. Teletype, yes. I paid $1,500 for our first fax machine with 16 shades of gray and all the things that you thought were important, and you couldn't highlight it, because if you highlighted it would fade. Remember, you'd go to highlight that thermal, so you'd get that fax was the first thing you did. You Xeroxed it, copied it. But you have to have these call to actions, and again, that form should be in equal length. These forms can be smart forms to the point where, hey, they've been to our website before. Maybe I already know their email address, first name, last name. Then I can ask them another question. And this is one of the things our system does, is smart content. It will be the ability to say, well, what is your biggest marketing concern, for example? If they fill that one out, maybe the next time they're at our site looking at another piece of content, we're able to get more information out. And that's how, including their LinkedIn profile, you can get into your leads. So I'm just pointing out different ways to make content sticky there. This is something that we look at, the 360 view of your leads as it relates to LinkedIn. Who are they on social media? What is their particular culture? If our clients are on Twitter, we put it into our system because we want to see what are they interested in. How can we customize content to someone if we don't know their profile? Other things we can see. What pages, have they viewed on our site? Have they converted? Have you ever had a meeting that went so well before you get in the car they've actually sent you a LinkedIn invite? Or sometimes the best way to get good staff is to have interns and meet with someone, sit next to them for a half hour because you're hooked up with them at Baldwin Wallace. And she goes, I got to go to class. She was 10 seconds out the door, sent me a LinkedIn request. And then, after an internship, before Allie could graduate, I said, what are you doing? And we hired her. We're not letting her go. So, but again, she professionally in college, how many college students have a LinkedIn profile? A lot of them do, but there are many that are not utilizing the profile and not taking advantage of 4 or some 5 years of college of contacts they can have. Other things that you can do, again, when are they on your website? What emails are they opening? You can tie this into your LinkedIn as well. So questions? I see Caleb's here, and I think Caleb had to get back on the road, so I know Food's here. We talked about some tips and basics, profiles, content in your profile, building that out, current photo. We talked about recommendations and endorsements and the difference between the recommendations are a little lighter. The endorsements are a little lighter. It's, what does Ty know about manufacturing consulting? Oh yeah, he knows that. You click on that, Ty gets a recommendation. Does he want to add that to his profile? We talked about growing your network, utilizing groups. There is so much more, as you know, especially with our heavier premium users. For those that are in Facture, build out your profiles. You've got some downtime coming up, factory shut down. This is the time to get in your profile, tool it up, and what LinkedIn does, it'll also tell, if you let it, it'll tell your profiles that you've updated your profile. So many times it's a job change, status change, sometimes it's anniversaries. I've only had one technical glitch a number of years ago. All of a sudden I started getting all these congratulations on my anniversary at Key Bank. I've never worked at Key Bank in my life. LinkedIn customer service is pretty good. It took them a little while, months, but they finally said, yeah, there was a technical glitch we don't know why that happened. But all of a sudden people are like, when did you work at Key Bank? I'm like, what are they talking about? Are they punking me? And then I realized it had put out one of those weird messages. But for the most part, that's only happened once. That's who we are. Here's where we're at if you're looking for us. And questions, comments, I'd love some feedback. Again, thanks for Dan Griffith Digital Media for taping this, and we'll see if I've said anything that's worthy of tape. You know, Allie, other final comments?
No, I think it's good. I think the only thing we really didn't touch on was company.
Yes.
Yeah.
The question came up early when we were building our list company pages. So actually, Allie, if you don't mind,
Yeah, I can get our
if you can pull up your profile. So it's important, as we mentioned, if you're with a company, it should be the company that's reflected in your profile. We've seen people, as Allie mentioned, they're at a new company, but they haven't, updated their profile. And you can see here, so here's our company page. And again, this is where a lot of content lives. Yep. Yeah, you can scroll down. So this is a company page. I'm not quite
I
sure
don't know
what
why
that
it's
is.
coming up so blurry.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it's just probably because they're trying to send us advertisements.
Probably so.
Because we're on
We're on our
the
own.
colleges.
Yeah.
But again, if you have a company, because you're employed, that company name should be listed and should be a click through on your profile. So I don't know if you want to go to one of our profiles.
Right. And usually under recent updates, you can see, like articles or posts that we've done. And we're posting pretty much every single day of the week.
And we automate, for those that, are concerned, like, oh my God, I don't have time to post that much. There's a lot of tools that you can use. Hootsuite, we use HubSpot. A lot of ways that you can automate the posting. I'll be having business meeting or lunch with someone and they're like, did you just tweet? I'm like, what does it say?
Right.
And people that I run into, weddings, funerals, whatever, like, you are on social media a lot. Well, it's really myself and Allie pulling our resources, putting content together, and then timing it to go out when we know it's going to be better received. And again, usually using different channels. LinkedIn is one channel. We've talked about Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and then there's a lot of other specialized channels you may have also with groups. I don't know if you want to go to my profile.
Oh, sure. Yeah, why didn't you come up first? Okay.
So
Look at you, Rob.
again, if you scroll down, Allie's endorsed me on something. It's going to give you some highlights. But, first one that I want to come up, we mentioned about reordering it. That's something, if you get frustrated, if you add a couple positions and it puts it on the top, it's doing it by when it was put in. But you can also reorder it. A lot of mine are when they started to present. This is current. And so they will put the present ones up and then you can have your past ones. But again, this helps on search engine optimization. Oftentimes the company profiles are tied to whoever first set it up. And if that person's no longer with your company, LinkedIn's gotten better. If you send an email, say, hey, I work at this company, and it's got to almost come from that company's email address, I need the rights back. I just had a past client from a couple of years ago say, we don't have access to our LinkedIn page. We can't find the password. Well, I looked, and for some reason I was still an admin, as was the president of the company, so it's all they had to do was go to their LinkedIn profile. I just made the administrative assistant who called me an admin and just said, now you're an admin, you should go, because I don't think I even had the password. I think I was just made an admin. So there's different levels of security. So if you're the one that's going to be responsible for the company page, make sure you have access. If it's somebody else, you may have 3 out there. Try to kill the old ones. If they've got bad information, you should try to all have it in one place. I'm not sure that completely answered questions on company. We can go deeper on company profiles. I'm not sure if that was your question on company profiles.
Right, and then I think the only other thing we really need to talk about is apps, because there's 3 different apps you can have for LinkedIn. So there's, your regular LinkedIn where you can just look at your personal profile. There's Pulse, where you can look at the articles people are posting, and there's another one, which I don't know.
Right, yeah, Pulse on the articles that we were referring to earlier. Sometimes I'll look evening or early morning, or again, if I'm waiting on an appointment, I'll open the Pulse app on my phone. It'll say good morning or good evening, depending on what it is. And then it'll curate various pieces of content. Some might be national news, but it will also pull content from your network, which keeps you sticky to your network. So the first post may be something off the Wall Street Journal, and then I'll notice a post that Joe did or something is like my second or third post. What does that give you the ability to do? Read the post, like the post from your connection, make a comment. Again, keep the conversation going. I also use, to a little bit lesser degree, there is a groups app as well. So you can go look at your groups, see how many groups you're participating with, who's got content that's new from your group, and interact with your group content that way. And again, we're encouraging you to join groups that are relative to your industry and post content. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the industries that are all your competitors. Find places like we do, where WireNet is all about manufacturers. Factor is all about manufacturers, but we might not have competitors per se. That's where we want to be. We want to be in the room of manufacturers. You may want to be with design engineers or maintenance control people. It just depends on your particular industry and what you're targeting. Find the subgroups of those people. Mm-hmm. Questions on that? So hang out, enjoy lunch, courtesy of Factor, and we'll stick around for any questions. And I think the only person that had to come a little bit late, member of our Factor group, is Vicki Porter. So Vicki, why don't you tell them who you are and what you do?
Oh, okay. My name is Vicki Porter, and I'm with Nordic Incorporated. We are a full-service printing company. We make permanent product markings for equipment and products that people manufacture. And I've been busy looking for a manufacturing rep, so if anybody knows anyone that's out there looking to increase their income, let me know. We're national and...
Thanks, Vicki.
No, sure.
For those that are in Factor, I will send out the slides. If you're not in Factor and you want a copy of slides, just give me a card or send me an email, and we'll send you a copy of our slides. Don't normally do that, but I trust that it won't be content that I'll see in somebody else's presentation per se. Not that we're doing anything earth-shatteringly new here. So
You can't post it on LinkedIn.
you can post it on LinkedIn as long as we get credit.
So when you try the premium for free, how long does it give you?
I think 30 days.
A month?
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah, that was some of the discussion we had, Vicki, is there's about 3 or maybe now 4 of you that use a premium at different levels. Sales Navigator seems to be the one that a lot of sales folks use. Recruiters, I don't know if you definitely, LinkedIn has changed recruiting, completely. And I look at someone's profile, it's not stalking anymore. If someone's going to be at a meeting, or I'm going to see, if they say, here's the 5 people that are going to be in the meeting, it's not taboo anymore. We're looking, you're getting an idea, you make some connections, you come in and say, oh, I see that you're also involved in such and such sport. Again, it's bonding rapport.
Well, see, I've always had the thought that if I creep on someone's profile and then I don't friend them, I'm like saying to them, you're not worth it.
Yes and no. And now in the Factor way of one-to-ones, remember I do that advanced search. I'll search sales managers, and then I'll bring up that search, and I'll start looking and say, well, do I really want a connection in California? Is that going to be, some of you are territory based. So you don't know that necessarily until you look at a profile. I've seen a lot of times where, they're not a profile for me, not someone I want to connect. And very much the next day or later that day, I do see that they've also looked at me. Sometimes there might be a reason to connect. But it's not like, Facebook per se where, we're friends, we're not friends. I think people know that LinkedIn now, is where connections are made. And so everybody's looking at each other's profiles. That's the reason to be there. So that stigma, that culture, I think, has dissipated. It used to be the big deal about premium was, you could look at people's profiles, without them knowing of it. And I usually see, and it will give you a subset of the following people have looked at your profile if you're not premium. Mm-hmm. And then it'll say to see the rest, sign up for premium. Sometimes there's people under private, but it's very interesting to see who's looking at your profile. Same with posts, who's read your posts, what is the throughput, who's consuming your content. And then if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I saw that article, you know that already.
So even if you're premium and they have blocked, the fact that they look at your profile, the fact that you're premium doesn't supersede the fact
I think it might. Vicki, Mike?
Yeah, basically what it'll tell you is if they're blocked, it'll say someone they'll give their company name,
right,
looked at your profile, so you can tell if
It's the same with our inbound software. If they've been on our website from their IP address, but they haven't database themselves yet, we'll see that. If they're, from such and such manufacturing company, I'm like, someone's looking at us. They've consumed 8 pages. If 2 months later they come back and they do download an ebook and database themselves, our software will actually go back and say, wait a second, they've been here before, and here's now their profile history. Here's the content they've consumed. Here's what they're looking at. Isn't that all information that we can use better in sales? So, lunch is right outside the door. Come on in here and stick around. I think we have the room till we leave. And we just promised Caleb we'd clean up, so they let us come back all next year. Thank you. We appreciate it. If you like the slides, Allie really had a lot to do.